Back when the list of the highest grossing films wasn't a total meme, Jaws broke the all-time record and became the highest grossing film of all time and put Spielberg on the map. The main reason behind this tremendous success was that Universal tried out a novel release strategy which had only ever been used once before in a Charles Bronson film a year prior. The strategy was to print out a whole bunch of copies of the film and then flood the market with several screenings of Jaws a day. Which you might notice is how every single film is released today. But back in the day, film reels were expensive, and so there would be a very limited amount of them traveling from place to place. But with Jaws, the studios realized that people will happily watch a film more than once if it's good, which drastically increased the amount of money that any given film could earn. Now for this flooding to work, Jaws did have to be a good film. Or not, I guess. Point taken. Obviously the factors that made Jaws good are numerous, from John Williams' iconic score to the fact that Robert Shaw's hatred of all living things surely gave the performances a lot of authenticity. The thing I wanted to touch upon though was the story that Steven Spielberg chose to tell, because it's unlike any other in his entire filmography. Most Spielberg films generally follow very safe and rigid story structure, sacrificing unpredictability for the potential of lots of mass appeal. However, Jaws still finds that mass appeal with a much bolder narrative. Anyone who has seen Jaws knows that there are two distinct parts to this film. The first half, which is all about identifying the shark threat and convincing the authorities that it is a problem that cannot be shrugged off. And the second half where Quint, Chief Brody and Hooper are hunting the shark on their boat. But these parts are in fact so distinct that they might as well be the Kutcher twins, because both tell a completely different and independent narrative. The first half starts with introducing the shark threat and Brody as the protagonist of the story, but in fact the real antagonistic force isn't the shark in this part of the film, but the mayor and everyone else in charge of running the island. The whole story plays out like a 40s political thriller, where Brody has to battle government corruption and incompetence. It's full of Hitchcockian storytelling, and no, not just because Spielberg used the vertigo shot. Chief Brody's a classic Hitchcockian everyman protagonist, stuck in a dangerous situation with one pivotal flaw, that being his fear of water in this case. Spielberg builds suspense through depriving the audience of information and meddling with pace, halting it during the pivotal tense scenes and stretching the action out while supplementing it with John Williams' score for maximum effect. All extremely Hitchcockian elements filtered through Spielberg's more fun-going lens. What's interesting here is that this governmental incompetence arc is not only fully developed in the first half, but also fully resolved. The whole arc is complete and doesn't get as much as a mention or an allusion in the second half. Speaking of which, here the story does a complete 180 as the now free protagonists depart into the sea in hunt of the shark. The setup here is a classic horror survival story, people against the elements. The antagonistic force is now just as much the shark as the internal conflicts amongst them. All three of them are very different and must face off against their own fears, or their ego, or distaste for one another, or the malfunctioning shark in order to survive. And just like the first half, it is a very independent story. Yes, you'd be missing some context, but somebody could watch just the second half of Jaws and not only not feel lost, but also feel quite satisfied with the story arc and where it concludes at the end of the film. And it's all taken up a notch by the threads that actually tie the two together, like Spielberg's suspenseful direction, the score, and some of the things that are set up in the first half and later paid off in the second, like Brody's fear of water that he has to overcome, or the character flaws of each person that are established during their first few introductory scenes. Anyways, you don't really need to know any of this because Jaws is the kind of film for which you can just turn off the brain and watch a big shark go to town. But now you do. And if you'd like to learn more things about more films, consider following this channel and sharing who your favorite shark is. Mine is Umo Umo, the peak of shark cinema.